Vladimir Putin is flying to Beijing not for nothing but to discuss Russia's war against Ukraine. And here I want to say we finally lived to see it. After the summit between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made an official statement that everyone treated as a sensation. And he stated the following, quote, "Since both China and the United States are ready to maintain communication and play a constructive role in the political settlement of the crisis, we hope for a swift end to the hostilities in Ukraine." It would seem like a breakthrough, and now Putin is also flying to Beijing. For the first time, China officially says we, meaning the US and China together in the context of Ukraine. For the first time since the two-day summit between Trump and Xi Jinping, something resembling a joint position is being voiced. But I want to honestly analyze this news, because the devil, as usual, is in the details here. I'm Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like this episode, leave any comment, and please subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video, where we publish breaking news as it comes in. So China, after Donald Trump's visit and before Vladimir Putin's visit to Beijing, announced that it is ready to help end the war in Ukraine. First, what exactly did Foreign Minister Wang Yi say? Quote, "China and the US are ready to continue maintaining communication and to play a constructive role in promoting a political resolution of the crisis." Let me point out right away that these phrases, maintaining communication and playing a constructive role, are the mildest of all possible diplomatic formulations. Right. Also, from my university days, I remember that if you open any textbook on diplomacy, you'll see that this is the easiest way to avoid any commitments. To say that we maintain communication and play a constructive role in international affairs. This isn't the language of mediation. It's not a plan, not negotiations, not guarantees, not an attempt to resolve or settle this conflict and so on. No, just communication and a constructive role. These are the terms China has been using about Ukraine since February 2022. The official statement from the Chinese Foreign Ministry after the Trump and Xi Jinping summit sounds like this. Xi Jinping said, "I have reached an agreement with President Trump on a new vision for building constructive China-US relations and strategic stability." And again, we hear constructive strategic stability. This is a new term that Beijing has proposed to describe all bilateral relations with the Americans. It means that cooperation is the foundation. Competition can exist within reasonable limits, disagreements are managed, and the world is predictable. Ukraine, in this whole concept, is one of the elements of managed disagreements. That is, it's not about resolving this disagreement, but about managing it. Why is it important to see this through the lens of history? Here you just need to follow the entire chronology of Chinese statements about Ukraine since February. The point is that China has mentioned a constructive role probably 100 times, if not more. Every time, nothing specific. Well, plus, don't forget that on one hand, China always talks about a constructive role, and on the other hand, it supplies Russia with materials that are mostly directly used by the Russian military machine. In exchange, Russia supplied China with submarine, missile, and other sensitive technologies. At the same time, the Council on Foreign Relations. One of the leading US think tanks is publishing an important assessment today. Quote, "When President Trump arrives in Beijing, Xi Jinping is convinced that he is winning. He has long been telling his staff that the East is rising and the West is declining and that time and momentum are on China's side. China does not want Russia to be completely defeated, as this would remove the main strategic counterbalance to the US in Europe. And it does not want Russia to lose too obviously. This would weaken the China-Russia partnership." And here it should be acknowledged that US President Donald Trump is clearly playing into these sentiments of China. Immediately after the summit, Trump alarmed allies by publicly warning Taiwan against declaring formal independence, questioning the very wisdom of the idea of defending the island. And he openly called the sale of American weapons to Taipei a bargaining chip to secure trade concessions from Beijing. That's the whole set of priorities. Again, I talked in more detail about how Trump is handing Taiwan over to China in the previous episode, so I won't repeat myself. To put it briefly, Trump advised Taiwan to keep quiet, not to stand out, and not to irritate China, or not to provoke China. And now, why is Putin flying to Beijing against this backdrop? Officially, the Kremlin, through Peskov, called it routine contacts, but the Chinese publication South China Morning Post puts it a bit more precisely. Putin's visit is Beijing's attempt to manage its relations with Moscow and Washington and to position itself as a key power. But it also became known that Putin will arrive to sign a new declaration on strategic cooperation with Xi Jinping. And the signing of such a declaration just 5 days after Beijing announced its constructive role on Ukraine, again to put it in diplomatic terms, is not contradictory. This is China simultaneously telling Trump that they will help with Ukraine and telling Putin that they will help him. And Beijing is trying to pretend that they are taking a neutral position. And here it's important to recognize that Beijing would gladly shift the burden of responsibility onto the European coalition of the willing, led by Macron, Starmer, and Merz. China is quite satisfied if a hastily put together American peace plan or Donald Trump's plan to end Russia's war against Ukraine runs into this wall of Putin's intransigence. This likely deadlock opens up opportunities for China to enter the peace process and demonstrate its ability to change the situation. In other words, China is waiting for the US and Europe to get tired of negotiating with Putin, and then China, will come out as the winner who can reconcile everyone. And China is clearly waiting. And after meeting with Xi Jinping in Beijing, Trump said the following about Ukraine. Yes, we discussed it. This is that conflict. It's a conflict we want to see resolved. Again, we want to see it. This doesn't mean they've agreed to achieve peace. They haven't agreed to make efforts to mediate. Wanting to see it is not a commitment. Unfortunately, it's clear Trump once again failed to achieve anything. And finally, I'll add information from the Financial Times, which wrote the other day that there definitely won't be a peace agreement on Ukraine by the end of this year. Because Putin believes that Russia, the Russian Federation, will be able to capture the entire Donbass by the end of the year. He told Trump this, and Trump believed it. That's why he's just ready to wait. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and don't forget to give a like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. I would be grateful for any support from you. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.